Today we're going to explore the role of domes in monumental architecture of the ancient world, their religious symbolism, their construction, and the historical and cultural context that influenced their designs. We'll do this through the lens provided by dome structures at 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites: the Pantheon in Rome, dating from the earliest 2nd century, the Mausoleum of Theodoric in Ravenna, Italy, an Arian Christian funereal structure that dates from the early 6th century, and the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, an Islamic shrine dating from the late 7th century. We'll begin in Rome, where the Pantheon represents a technological marvel made possible by the invention of concrete. Built between 114 and 128, the Pantheon long held the world record for the largest dome. The Pantheon is a barrel-shaped building having thick concrete walls faced with brick outside and decorative stone paneling inside. Alcoves distributed around the barrel originally housed statues of Roman gods. Moving upwards, a frieze of false windows and columns created with multi-hued decorative stone transitions abruptly to a monochromatic concrete dome patterned with square recesses that decrease in size upwards. A smaller Roman temple facade, complete with a Corinthian column-flanked portico topped with a triangular lintel, provides ingress into the rotunda. Though no longer present, arcades flanked the approach to the temple and initially hid the curved rotunda walls from the visitor's sight. Entering through the rectangular facade and into the domed rotunda would have been a jaw-dropping surprise. The dome culminates in a circular opening, the oculus, which allows both light and precipitation to enter. Dimensions of the rotunda are such that a perfect sphere could sit at the floor's center and nestle beneath the dome. From above, it's clear that the Pantheon dome was cast in 5 levels, each divided into 28 sectors that narrow upwards. The concrete was cast in wooden forms, with stronger but denser crystalline aggregate, e.g. granite, used in the concrete for the lower levels, and weaker but lighter weight volcanic rock aggregate used in the upper levels. Additional weight loss was accomplished by hiding empty vessels within the concrete. Forces created by the weight of the dome press downwards and outward radially. Thick walls bear the downward pressure of the dome, while rings absorb the outward pressure. The ultimate solution to decreasing the weight was by leaving the center of the roof open to the sky, creating a 9-meter diameter oculus, having symbolic as well as technological significance. Despite these strategies, the 44-meter wide roof would have been heavy and risk collapse. One last feature contributing to the necessary weight loss for the Pantheon are the coffers, designed into the underside of each level's forms. From the ground, these cavities look like recessed sets of nested squares, but they are in fact trapezoidal, with the sides of each nested shape angled to be visible from the ground. Why square-shaped coffers embedded in a spherical dome? One source noted that the coffers are similar in dimension and alignment to the square pattern of decorative stones covering the temple floor. Another possible interpretation is that the squares represent Earth, with the 4 sides corresponding to the 4 cardinal directions, while circles and spheres represent the heavens, an idea perfectly aligned with the metaphor of the Pantheon being a place to celebrate the gods. Originally, the visitor would have been surrounded by statues of Roman gods expressly communicating the temple's dedication to the Roman Pantheon. Light shining down through the oculus echoed the sun moving along the rotunda's wall as each day progressed, an explicit reminder of the astrological basis of Roman religion and supporting the possibility that the Pantheon itself was some sort of astronomical instrument. Apparently, on Rome's birthday on April 21st, a visitor entering from the north would have been dazzled by the sun's rays, such that their perception of the dome would have been minimized. Flipping the perspective, one source speculates that the oculus may have been seen as the iris of an eyeball directed upwards towards the gods. Some of the brightest stars in the northern hemisphere would have been visible through the oculus in the nighttime sky of 126. Next, let's move to the Dome of the Rock, the earliest example of Islamic monumental architecture, which rises over the city of Jerusalem. Built in 632, this octagonal shrine is capped by a golden dome. Transitional from a square to a circle, the octagonal base invokes earth while the dome invokes paradise. Alternatively, the octagonal base may invoke the 8 gardens of paradise described in the Quran. The shrine encloses a rocky outcrop that is sacred to both Judeo-Christian and Islamic faiths. Temple Rock is purported to be both where Abraham was poised to sacrifice his son and where Muhammad returned from a nighttime journey to heaven. Temple Mount was the original location of the Judaic Solomon's Temple, destroyed by the Romans and later used as a dump site in the 5th to 7th century. Early Christian building was focused elsewhere. The Basilica of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is aligned with the purported site of Jesus' crucifixion, while a domed octagonal section purportedly overlies the place where Jesus' burial and resurrection occurred. Significantly, the Golden Islamic Dome is essentially the same dimensions as the Golden Dome on the nearby Holy Sepulchre Church, but rises to a slightly higher elevation. Why build this shrine? The visual appropriation of golden dome capping an octagonal base may communicate an intentional competition between the younger Islamic religion with the older Christian religion. Alternatively, religious-based political competitions may have been hypothesized. Perhaps Temple Rock was being positioned as an alternative Islamic pilgrimage site as Islamic leaders of Mecca and Jerusalem were in conflict. Or the competition was aimed at Constantinople, where the contemporaneous Hagia Sophia was being advertised as the new Christian seat of heaven on earth. Whatever the motivation, this wooden dome has not stood the test of time well. It collapsed in 1015 due to an earthquake and was rebuilt later. 52 windows are arranged around the dome's base, which supported by 12 columns, together representing the weeks and months, while 4 main columns represent the 4 seasons. Byzantine mosaics line the upper reaches of the shrine's interior. The rich color scheme of reds, blues, and greens, including the abundant use of gold, is like those used in Byzantine churches. The interior mosaics, though, are dominated by geometric vegetative forms, invoking the gardens of paradise that encircle crowns and jewelry representing Byzantine and Persian imperial regalia. What distinguishes these Islamic mosaics from their Byzantine contemporaries is the absence of human or animal figures, an Islamic interpretation of scripture that warns against idolatry. A notable addition is the use of Arabic calligraphy as a decorative element. In this case, a 240-meter-long frieze inside the octagon records the throne verse of the Quran that begins with "God, there is no God but Him." The peak of the interior is a golden medallion, possibly invoking paradise. Lastly, we'll visit the Mausoleum of Theodoric in northern Italy, the only remaining Aryan Christian monument. This squat, 10-sided structure is made from gray marble that was transported about 400 kilometers from Croatia. The second floor held Theodoric, king of the Ostrogoths sarcophagus, which was made from African rock that was associated with Roman royalty. Though the sarcophagus was desecrated soon after Theodoric's death in 526, the mausoleum persists to this day. The saucer-shaped marble dome capping the second floor was carved from a single piece of marble that is estimated to weigh more than 240 tons. The dome is 11 meters in diameter and is carved with a single image, a Greek cross associated with early Christianity. Biblical verses inscribed around the inner cylindrical wall are illuminated by sunlight streaming through small cross-shaped windows on the Feast of the Annunciation. On the equinoxes, rays of the setting sun illuminate lines of scripture inscribed in the inner walls. Shaped like the Pantheon, the geometry and imagery of the second floor thus invokes heaven and the hope of resurrection. The mausoleum is made of limestone blocks that are so precisely cut that no mortar is needed to hold them together, an ancient building technique. Blocks forming the 10 Roman-style arches surrounding the lower floor are interconnected in a notch and groove system. The massive monolithic dome presses down and holds the interlocking blocks together. Dismantling the building would require removal of the heavy monolithic dome, a dangerous and technologically challenging proposition. Theodoric's mausoleum would have been a target for erasure both because he represented a heretical Christian sect and because he fashioned himself as a king within the Byzantine Empire. I find this building so fascinating because it was built with the goal of resisting destruction, either by ravaging of later rulers or due to the recycling of materials. It was surely clear to builders of that time that virtually no building, even an imperial tomb, was immune to later dismantling unless it was intentionally built with such safeguards. Theodoric thus prepared for the possible defeat of the Ostrogoths by making his mausoleum inviolable. This indeed came to pass soon after his death, as Emperor Justinian I invaded Italy and brought an end to Ostrogoth rule. In these examples, domes and their decorations invoke the heavens and the promise of paradise. In some, the transition between a square or multi-sided base invokes the earth, with the combination of square transitioning to circle invoking the hope of an afterlife to practitioners of Judeo-Christian and Islamic faiths. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of the construction and interpretation of domes in ancient monumental architecture.